SpinCraft, a Blender add-on for sculpting with motion and shaping with rhythm. SpinCraft Overview. Ever wish sculpting in Blender felt as natural as shaping clay on a potter's wheel or carving with a lathe? That's what SpinCraft aims to achieve, bringing that fluid, hands-on experience to the digital world. With SpinCraft, your model rotates automatically, letting you sculpt smooth, dynamic forms without rigid workflows or a steep learning curve. Whether you're a beginner looking for an intuitive sculpting tool or an experienced artist exploring new creative possibilities, SpinCraft makes sculpting feel more organic, rhythmic, and expressive. From refining organic details to crafting intricate radial designs, SpinCraft brings motion and flow into your sculpting process, keeping you in the zone and creating with ease. Who is SpinCraft for? Whether you sculpt daily or just enjoy experimenting, SpinCraft brings a new level of creative freedom to your workflow. It's perfect for digital sculptors and 3D artists. Stay in the creative flow with hands-free sculpting. Hobbyists and relaxation seekers. Enjoy a stress-free, meditative sculpting experience. Blender enthusiasts. A simple yet powerful tool to enhance sculpting workflows. Beginners. Explore, experiment, and sculpt freely without the steep learning curve. UI explained. Some of these UI options might look familiar since they're based on existing Blender tools. But by keeping them in this panel, everything's more streamlined. Less clutter, more focus. Plus, it's easier to control with a mouse or pen. The panel. Brush section. Brush size and strength. These work just like Blender's default brush settings. The key difference: brush strength isn't locked at 1.0. It ranges from 0.0 to 10.0. This flexibility is great for delicate brushes, like the smooth brush, when you need a bit more intensity. If you're not using unified brush settings, you won't see the corresponding slider in the panel. Keeps things clean and simple. You'll also find popover panels for stroke and symmetry settings in this section. Stroke settings. Here, you can either apply recommended stroke settings automatically or sync them with your current brush. One thing to note, if you're using Blender 4.3 or later, you might notice a slight delay due to the new brush asset system. But if you're on an earlier version, you won't have that issue. Symmetry settings. These are the essential symmetry options I've found most useful, especially for sculpting with the turntable. Note, currently, the brush stroke setting in Blender version 4.4 beta is only partially setting the brush strokes. It handles some of the brushes, but not all of them. I am not sure if this is due to the beta status or my add-on, but this will be fixed in the full release of 4.4. Next, we have the Remesh and Smooth section. Remesh operator. This works just like Blender's default operator. Select a mesh to enable the Remesh feature, and you'll see a popover panel where you can tweak how the remeshing is calculated. Smooth operator. This is the mesh filter tool found in Sculpt Mode's toolbar. With this operator, you can apply the smooth filter without switching tools or manually dragging the mouse. You need to have a mesh and be in Sculpt Mode to use the Smooth operator. In the popover panel for the Smooth operator, you can fine-tune the smoothing process. I've had great success running it at default settings and increasing the iteration count if the mesh becomes tricky to control. Note, if you're using Blender versions prior to 3.6, you won't see the Smooth operator. I'm working on making it compatible with those earlier versions, but I'm not sure if it will work the same as in later versions. If I do find a way to make the earlier version's mesh filter tool work in this add-on, I'll definitely put out an update. Turntable section. Speed X, Y, Z. This sets how fast and in which direction or axis your object spins. If you set a value to 0, that axis won't rotate. To keep things simple, you can only set speeds between -100 and 100. Additional fine-tuning can be done in the turntable settings we'll cover in a moment. Toggle rotation. This starts the rotation based on your selection in turntable settings. Your active object or objects will rotate based on the speed values you set in the panel, the multiplier and rotation method defined in the settings. You can also right-click the button to set a shortcut. Don't worry, I don't override your key bindings, so it's blank by default. Turntable settings. Rotation multiplier. This sets how fast your turntable rotates. Think of it as your speed dial, giving you smooth results without needing extreme settings. Use testing operator. I've added a new rotation method to make sure it works well on different systems. With feedback from this test, I hope to make everything run better without any trade-offs. Modal. This is the original rotation operator. It works great on my desktop and laptop, but my laptop lags with complex meshes. Since my laptop isn't great with sculpting in general, I'm not sure how much of the slowdown is due to the add-on. I think most of it is just the limits of my laptop's sculpting performance. Timer. Here's a timer-based operator for handling rotation. While I personally like the modal operator, I'm testing different methods to see if I can get smoother results. The timer operator should perform better on lower-end systems, but I don't have a way to test it across multiple setups. Feedback is always welcome. Viewport anti-aliasing. This setting is usually in Blender's preferences, but I've included it here to possibly boost performance on lower-end systems. Lower anti-aliasing settings, or turning it off, should, in theory, give you better performance compared to higher values. The header. At the top right of the header, there's an alternative way to access SpinCraft without keeping the panel open. The popover panel is a replica of the main panel, offering a compact, yet accessible way to use the tool. I know sculpting can get chaotic with multiple panels and toolbars, so this is my way of keeping the tool convenient, yet unobtrusive, helping you stay focused on sculpting without unnecessary UI clutter. I'd love to hear from you. I'll be setting up a community poll to find out which tools you find most useful and how SpinCraft can evolve to better fit your workflow. Your input will help me see which tools beginners rely on versus what experienced artists prefer, so I can find ways to bridge the gap with user-friendly features integrated directly into SpinCraft. Additionally, I'd like to get feedback on how the tool should be accessed, whether to keep the header popover, switch to a pie menu, or offer another alternative. Or maybe keeping it simple with just the tool shelf panel is all that's needed. If you have any thoughts, I'd love to hear them. Just like working with clay on a real pottery wheel or running a lathe, SpinCraft lets you focus on shaping, sculpting, and enjoying the process without constantly adjusting your view. Let the model spin, find your rhythm, and sculpt with ease. Whether you're refining a form or experimenting with something new, SpinCraft keeps your hands in the creative zone, so you can lose yourself in the flow, just like a potter shaping clay. No stress, no rigid workflows, just you, your art, and the rhythm of creation. The SpinCraft add-on will soon be available on the Blender market, also on SuperHive, depending on how that transition plays out. Now that we've covered the essentials, let me show you how SpinCraft fits into my own sculpting workflow. Thank you for your time. If you encounter any issues or have suggestions, I'd love to hear your feedback, whether it's positive or constructive. In the remainder of this video, with me experimenting with SpinCraft, you might see the mesh get a bit chaotic. Honestly, that's one of the joys of this workflow. Normally, I'd just hit undo on the action that caused the issue, but with SpinCraft's lighthearted approach, I simply fix it and keep going. It's all part of the creative process. This also aligns with real-world crafting. If you're sticking around, sit back, relax, and enjoy the flow. Check out my channel for other demonstrations of SpinCraft.